cause for its beginning. The world exists, therefore the world had a beginning. So, what caused the beginning of the earth, or the universe? So if everything that exists now came into being, all of us did, we all came into being, there was a day, if we go back 100 years ago, none of us existed, put it that way. I think 100 is safe. Yep, Dave, yeah, 80, okay. So 100 years ago, none of us existed. 100 years ago, it's not likely that anything in this room existed. Maybe it's possible that the trees from which some of this wood was taken existed, maybe, but yeah, not much, right? Okay, so 100 years, you just go back 100 years, everything in here since then has come into existence. That means that something had to have happened in order for these things to come into existence. In order for me to come into existence, my parents had to meet. And for them to come into existence, their parents had to meet. Right? You just take something that simple. For this to come into existence, trees had to grow. And then someone had to cut them down and work them. But just the trees themselves had to grow. Well, where did the trees come from? Well, they came from seeds that were planted naturally or by somebody else. Where did the seeds come from? Well, other trees that existed before this one. Well, there had to be, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Everyone knows the answer to this question. The chicken came first. Okay, so there had to be a first chicken. Where did the first chicken come from? You see, you keep pushing it back. There had to be something that caused the first chicken to come into existence, to lay an egg and have more chickens.
I thought it was a road that needed to cross.
It needed a road. Yeah, the chicken didn't become a chicken until it crossed the road. In its full chickenness. Yes. So this is also, if you think about the dominoes, a common illustration for this is not playing dominoes, which weird people like me actually play dominoes, but what most people think of as dominoes, where you set them all up on end and you knock them over. Okay? So let's say that you walk in some Wednesday night and there's a train of dominoes, running through here and out the door and around the corner, and you're around the corner, and while you're standing around the corner, here come the dominoes and they start falling down in front of you. And you say, well, someone must have tipped over the first domino. There must be a first domino somewhere. I can't see it, but there must be a first domino somewhere, and somebody tipped it over, and I'm just seeing the after effects of that chain of events. And you would be right. So the question is, who tipped over the first domino? Well, and that's where we get back to God.
I don't know.
You don't know? But somebody did. So it raises the question that somebody did. Okay, so that's kind of the cosmological argument, or the Kalam argument, is if you keep pushing things back, you only have two choices. One choice is that all things are eternal, which is not true, or only one thing is eternal, and from that one thing, all things exist. And that's one way of trying to reason back to God. Now, obviously, it's short. I mean, that's as far as you get. And even William Lane Craig identifies that. Because once you figure out that a God exists, you have to figure out, well, which God is it? And what does that mean for me? Well, then you're going to have to get into scriptures to discuss that. Okay. Teleological argument is the second, it's kind of the opposite of the first one, and that is a final cause, or sometimes called intelligent design. So if you've heard of intelligent design, there are scientists, and some of them don't even claim to be Christian, but they believe that when you look at the world around us, there is such design that it demands a designer, basically. So here's one illustration that's commonly used. And this was in a debate between two different Christian apologists, actually. So you're walking through the woods, maybe you're hunting, and you're walking through the woods that you haven't been in before, and you come across a little clearing, and you find that there are rows of vegetables that have been planted in this little clearing, and maybe a little fence around it. And you say, what a marvel! The universe existed for, 30 billion years, and this garden just popped up right here out of natural causes. Well, no, what do you say? You say, there must be a farmer nearby, or somebody planted a farm plot for deer, or somebody, lives nearby, and we're on their property or something. You're thinking somebody, an intelligent person, actually came and planted out this garden. And there's order to it, and it certainly isn't random. It doesn't appear to have happened by accident. There is some intelligence here that planned this. So this is arguing from design, and which is a pretty strong argument if someone is being reasonable. Because it's hard to look at the world. What's the second law of thermodynamics? Does anyone know the second law of thermodynamics?
No.
Oh. Yep. So Carl, works on the railroad, and he doesn't just throw stuff out there and then wait a while and it all fixes itself, right? You wouldn't have a job if it weren't for the second law of thermodynamics, because there'd be nothing to fix. Right? Everything falls apart. Everything degrades. Everything dissolves. When I was in Papua New Guinea in '94, we were a block from the ocean where the missionaries lived. The amount of time, when you live in a jungle, let's put it this way, when you live in a jungle, in a rainforest, the amount of time it takes for you to maintain everything is a significant part of your life, because the jungle simply will take over, right? It will just simply destroy everything. If you build a house there, then it's going to eventually destroy your house. I mean, this is part of life. So things degrade by their very nature. And if we find something that hasn't dissolved into chaos, or even if it is dissolving into chaos, we can see that it was a thing, then we say that something designed this. So these are a couple of the proofs of God, and there are others out there, and obviously there are people who challenge these, and these obviously only go so far as to what they can communicate about God. So there's a weakness there in those. Now on the other side of the question, so revelation by nature, and we've talked quite a bit about that. And there are two other revelations. Now the question doesn't refer to the second one, but I'll read that here. Because Jesus Christ was the revelation of God. We mentioned it briefly last week, I think, actually. Someone else did in the class. Hebrews 1 is, that says Hebrews 11. Is it Hebrews 11?
I feel like Hebrews 1 is the correct reference.
Yeah, I think it's Hebrews 1. Although Hebrews 11, so Son of God is Hebrews 1. Revelation of Scripture is Hebrews 11. So I think I confused those. But anyway, yeah. So Hebrews 1 says, long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. Okay, so he's talking about the Old Testament. He's talking about different men or women that God used to speak at different times, different ways to the people. In verse 2, he says, but in these last days, or in these most recent days, he has spoken to us by his Son. So Jesus Christ, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. So the creation of the world is through Christ. And then verse 3, he, that is Jesus Christ, is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. So these are two metaphors to try to help us to understand that Jesus is God himself. So when you look at the sun, and the sun is in its brightness, in its glory, especially in this winter snow, and the sun's over here right now, so we'll just over here. You look at the sun, it's so bright that you can hardly look at it, right? Or you can't without hurting your eyes. Well, here it says that Jesus is the radiance of that glory. Okay, so he is like the glory of the glory. The radiance of Jesus' glory is mingled with the glory of God himself. And then he is the express imprint of his nature, which is like taking a coin and printing the coin. So the image on the coin looks exactly like the mold that's there. So Jesus is the image to the mold. God is the mold in this illustration, to argue that Jesus was the revelation of God. Okay, and then the second part of our question, is, but only his word and spirit reveal it fully and effectually for the salvation of sinners. And we looked at 2 Timothy before. 1 Corinthians 2, I guess it looks like we're about out of time. But 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 10, he says, these things God has revealed to us through the Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. Let's see, let me back up. Verse 6, I'll start in verse 6. Yet, among the mature, we do impart wisdom, although it is not a wisdom of this age or the rulers of this age who are doomed to pass away, but we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. These things God revealed to us through his Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. And so Paul was arguing in 1 Corinthians 2, even verse 2, I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. So what Paul was arguing to the people in Corinth is he said, I could have come to you like an orator and debated the secular philosophy of this world. I could have come and done that, but I didn't. When I came to you knowing only one thing, Jesus Christ and him crucified. And it's the Spirit who reveals that to us, and reveals it to us through his word. So there are other questions from the second half that we don't have time to look into today, which is why I said there's so many places we can go with this question. But it's his word and the Spirit that reveal it fully and effectually for the salvation of sinners. So when we tell others about Christ, we have to use the Word of God in order to do that, because that's what God uses. That's what the Holy Spirit uses. He uses his Word to communicate salvation. Romans 1:16 is another passage that's not up there that we could look at as well. Any Any questions or comments? We just kind of, I wasn't watching the clock, we just kind of, I think, ran out. No Sunday school next week. All right. I guess that wasn't one of the more exciting Sunday school classes. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and dismiss. Carl, would you like to close us in prayer today?
Okay, Father, we're thankful that you give us your word and your Holy Spirit to show us that Jesus is God, plan, salvation,